Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us once again at the 3 o'clock hour with SOC. Today we are going to do a special edition of the show again, and I'll be sharing a little more about that in just a second. Give me a moment as I welcome our Spanish-speaking neighbors into the program. Buenas tardes. Gracias por estar con nosotros una vez más a las 3 de la tarde con SAC. Para ustedes que quieren acceso al programa en español, por favor llamen al número que aparece en la pantalla y van a poder tener acceso vía una llamada de conferencia. El número es 425-436-6200. Cuando contestan la llamada, por favor compartan la contraseña que empieza con el número 6, que es 627-682. Thank you for giving me a second to welcome our Spanish-speaking residents. Today is a special edition of 3 o'clock with SOC. We had our elections on Tuesday, and there were so many concerns and questions regarding it still being held that we decided to do several day series trying to answer the questions you have shared with us, the concerns you have shared with us, and bringing on the forum subject matter experts and leaders in our community. My name is Tammy Rivera, and I'm the Executive Director and Lead Organizer for Southside Organizing Center. I'd like to share a disclaimer before we start our program. The views and opinions shared today do not necessarily reflect those of SOC. And we're going to continue with our program. Regularly at 3 o'clock, we will be on with you Monday through Friday, sharing the latest on the coronavirus information, resources, and ways you can take action, sharing the latest on elections. We're going to be talking about the election of this past Tuesday for a while, but then let's not forget we have a very important fall election as well. And this isn't a census year, it's a critical year for us to be counted as it has an impact for the next decade. So we'll be bringing you information about that. Every program, we want to highlight one of our staff and share the ongoing programs and services that SOC has for you as well. And then last segment of the forum is a feature spot. It is viewers' choice, residents' choice, responding to your specific questions and concerns. Things like outside of the themes that I shared, what do you want to know and hear about in the community? Are you interested in knowing if an organization is still open? Are you interested in planting an organic garden? Are you having needs, rehab needs for your home? Are you asking, do you want to know how people are coping while we're isolating? So whatever topics you want, this is the part of the show that you all can design. Please be with us tomorrow for another special edition of the show. On Monday as well, we are having Ed Falone, Marquette University law professor, with us. If you were here on Wednesday, you know that we tried to have him and Judge Pedro Colon on, and the technology, the software wasn't allowing us. They let us know that with the current situation, they're having massive overloads. And then in the midweek, we're going to have legacy farm worker rights, Jesus Salas with us, a legacy leader in our community. You aren't going to want to miss these next days, especially after we had our first discussion on Wednesday with the Director of Advocacy from the ACLU. Before we get started in the program, I want to remind you that SOC is here for you. We haven't missed a day since this started. You can reach us in all the ways you used to, except for in person. And we're looking forward to being able to do that again. So you can call us at 414-672-8090. You can email us at soc@socmilwaukee.org. You can connect with us at any of our social media platforms, and we certainly encourage you to engage with us today here on this Facebook Live. And in regards to that, we want to encourage your engagement, and we know these are hard times. So every day we are going to be giving away a $25 gift certificate for those of you who enter the drawing. How can you enter the drawing? There's lots of ways. And the more you do, the more times you'll be entered. You can like this Facebook Live. You can share it. You can provide a comment or a question. You can recommend what segment we should do during the resident's choice, the viewer's choice. If you have a picture from the vote on Tuesday, the election on Tuesday, you can share that here. Um, and if you completed the census online, you can share a screenshot or picture of that. And then last but not least, we are starting out this new way of grassroots organizing with you digitally. And we want to hear what's working and not. And so please fill out our survey so we know that you're engaged and that we're hearing your voice. Today's special edition topic, the why to yesterday's election. Despite the coronavirus risk, despite the governor's safer at home order, the elections were held. So we want to talk about the systems, the processes, and the authority people had during leading up to the election and on the day of the election, and why they chose to hold it, and where do we go from here. And to that effect, we have a very special guest today, Dr. Tony Baez, School Board Director, Civil Rights and Latino Rights Legacy Leader. And then he'll be with us, and after him will be Christine Newman Ortiz, the Executive Director of Voces de la Frontera and Immigrant and Workers' Rights activist. So with us today, we'd like to welcome Dr. Tony Baez. All the way from Puerto Rico, he is joining us. Dr. Baez, welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. We're so grateful that you're joining us all the way from Puerto Rico. Again, our condolences on the passing of your mother. All the more reason we are so grateful that you're making the sacrifice to be here with us today. Um, we have a list of questions that people have been asking Dr. Baez regarding the election, but why don't you start us off? I know you shared a very meaningful communication the other day. We have about 20 minutes. Why don't you share your thoughts on the election that occurred Tuesday? And if we have time, we'll ask some of the questions folks have been wanting to know.
Yes, Tammy, I thank you very much for having me on this forum. I wrote a very brief piece on the election because I felt compelled to share with others what I thought about what we did during the election. I am very disappointed at the fact that we participated in the election on Tuesday, in spite of the fact that there were huge health dangers for the people that participated in that process. I was disappointed at both the fact that the state court and the Supreme Court, but the state court in particular, sort of like invalidated or sort of like struck down the decision by Governor Evers to move forward with the election. And when they did that, they sent people into harm's way. Um, my problem is that when when we do that, we are sort of like participating in a process that we know is wrong. Um, the problem that I have generally with the Democratic reaction to this issue is that we should have known that we cannot reason with the current Republican administration or legislature in Madison and the White House, uh, and that we already went through that before. We remember very well that President Obama thought that in his charm, he could be able to go across the aisle, and he failed dramatically in almost every single count. Those folks, led by Mitch McConnell in the White House, were about getting people on the Supreme Court. They were about destroying Obamacare. They were about destroying every attempt he did. And in terms of immigration, both the Democrats and the Republicans really messed us up. We had those experiences already. And then when this happened, uh, even though some of us had been saying for a while, please do not hold this election, and actually some of us actually wrote to Governor Evers, I do not think that the Democratic folks under Evers were strong enough. I think that they were very weak and that the response was very weak, and that consequently they waited until the very last moment to see if the Republicans would change their mind. And we knew they were not, and they controlled the court. So, why participate in this election? When there are bad laws, we should resist those laws. We should fight back on those laws. By not participating in the election, we would have invalidated uh, anything related to the election. It seems to me that we are at that time in America that we need to be more aggressive and resist rather than allow ourselves to be parties to something that we know we're going to lose. The Republicans knew that if they went forward with the election, the participation of folks uh, against them basically was not going to be at par with the mobilization that they could make with right wing conservatives and with the people that voted for them. So we know that. Why did we do that? We have a history that tells us we should resist bad laws. I'm reminded that people like Martin Luther King raised the issue many, many times before, that whenever we are confronted with bad laws, we should resist those laws. So we are right now in a situation we know we cannot expect anything reasonable, fair, uncouth from Republicans that continue to do things that hurt the public health and hurt people in general. Uh, I think that part of the problem is that we have bought into the idea of a two-party system where the two parties really do not work for working class people and poor people and people of color. They sort of like work to keep people in office and to protect those people who are in office. And it's very unfortunate, but it's not happening for us. Latinos and people of color in general have to do something about this. We may have to explore the possibility after this pandemic of looking into other forms of participation. We want to participate in the democratic process. We should participate in the democratic process when we have uh, a reasonable means of participation, a reason to believe that our participation will mean something. Right now, it does not mean anything.
Hi, Dr. Baez. We're going to have to adapt to this technology that's not serving us quite well today. Thank you for your opening statement. I think a lot of us are reflecting on yesterday as we had very reactionary um, responses to the vote, and we're rushed to get people out of not being able to coalesce and have some different type of strategies. And so we're picking ourselves up now and trying to figure out how to move forward. And so what would you recommend as a community for us to move forward post-election now in heading towards responding to the coronavirus, responding to the election results, and getting prepared for the fall elections? What would you recommend for us moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think that about the four elections, we need to make sure that we do participate in that election, but on our terms. That we set some ground rules in terms of our participation. I am hoping that this pandemic will be over by then. If this pandemic is not over, then we have to revisit this matter. But we need to defeat the current administration. We need to make sure that people vote to make that happen. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. I think we got to get rid of this administration. Period. I'm not gonna joke about that. Uh, that is another question that we need to revisit. Now, in terms of the most immediate, right after the pandemic, I think that we need some community meetings with particularly people of color. I think that people of color are in this together. They have to see themselves as being in this together. People in the African American community, people in the Latin community are the most negatively impacted by that. There are progressive whites who we need to approach and we need to talk to because the current party system is not working for us. It has not worked for us in many, many years. It has not worked for poor people. Unfortunately, this capitalism is not working for working and poor people. Okay, so I recommend highly that after the pandemic, we get together to revisit what are the lessons from the pandemic, what are the lessons from the election, what kinds of things we need to do to move democracy forward, because democracy right now is stuck and the control is absolutely in the hands of people who are not for us. There are two folks that are out there, those who are crooks, those who are very rich, and that's a group in and of itself. Most of the members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, are super rich people. More than 400 of them are multimillionaires. Okay, they do not represent this, and that's one group. And the other group are the people who are foolish enough to believe, uh, based on race and based on a sense of fascism, that this is their time and that they are getting us together to hurt us. Okay, and they think that way. I mean, anybody that has been watching TV sees some followers of Trump saying very dumb things. So we need to revisit all of that, come together, think about it, and really think about the possibility of getting a power group together among peoples of color and progressive whites that want to work with us, so that we can move democracy forward.
during a
Yes.
during a time that's heavy for your family. Our condolences again on the passing of your mother, and all the more grateful we are for your presence with us today.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Okay. Adios.
Be safe. Bye bye. Well, here we are. We figured it out around the technology, how to communicate with your patients today. So grateful for your presence with us. Let's say some hellos as we get ready for our next speaker to be with us. Hello, Marcia, Gloria. Hello, Lilian Ramos. Hello, Maribel. Hello, Yolanda. Thank you for being with us. You heard just now from Dr. Tony Baez. Um, and like I said, he is on the island of Puerto Rico right now. So we are very um, grateful that he is here, that he made the efforts to be with us today. As you could hear in the background, you could hear the roosters. It's a very familiar sound to me when I visit my family in Puerto Rico as well. And he shared some, very strong opinions. Again, we are bringing leaders from across um, the South Side to give you some of their thoughts regarding Tuesday's election. I'll have to say, because we have guests with us, a disclaimer that the views and opinions shared on this show are not necessarily those of SOC, as we have a nonpartisan C3 organization. But we do allow people to share their voice, and it should be upon all of us to allow space for that. We're grateful for his time um, serving as well as a school board director, and for the decades and decades of his contributions to the Latino IX and civil rights movement locally. Now I'd like to see if we could bring on our next guest, um, to Christine Newman Ortiz, another friend and colleague, a legacy leader with SOC and in the community. She serves as the executive director of Voces de la Frontera, and she is a longtime um, immigration and workers' rights uh, legacy leader in our community. Both Dr. Baez and Christine have been awarded our legacy awards um, a couple of years back for the leadership and sacrifice that they've given to the community, and sort of the lack of recognition that sometimes our leaders get for the sacrifices they make. While we await getting Christine on, I'm going to share some of the questions that have arisen from Tuesday's election. Questions and concerns. Why did residents have to choose between their health, maybe even life, and their voting rights, when after all, voting rights in great form contribute to their health and even their life, and that it was a difficult and unnecessary position to put people in. Who had the authority ultimately to stop the election? As we know, um, there were efforts to try to make the election more accessible to folks by extending, for instance, the absentee ballots um, voting. And although they didn't extend the deadline when those were due, they still had to be postmarked by the 7th. They are allowing for enough time for them to arrive, those that were put in the mail, until the 13th. And so that decision was made by the U.S. Supreme Court. And as you know, that is the highest court in our land. And then the governor attempted the day before the elections to postpone them until June 9th. Some of the leaders in the legislature did not agree with that decision, and it went to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, who decided that the elections needed to be held. And so one of the questions that were asked in all of those, like, which one of those bodies has the most authority? So if the governor says hold it and the legislature says no, which one of those two has more authority? And then, of course, we know that the Wisconsin Supreme Court has more authority than the two of those bodies, and then the U.S. Supreme Court. But here begs the question from Tuesday's election: Did the health um, did the health department at any level have the authority to step in and say, there is a crisis, a pandemic, this is a public health hazard, and we're not going to allow the vote because we're going to close public facilities? Like, was that a possibility? Um, and then why couldn't it have been postponed? It would be more helpful to us residents if when people make decisions, they also share those. So if it couldn't be postponed, are there laws that require for it to take place? Um, Another question is, why was Madison able to have 66 polls reportedly open and Milwaukee only 5? Why was there a poll allowed to exist in the epicenter of of where the greatest concern is in the Milwaukee area? Um, if if Some of the questions were, if the governor had weeks to act, why didn't he act earlier? What prevented that? Was he um I'm sorry, I'm trying to check the phone and a couple of different areas as people are trying to problem solve for our next guest. So excuse me if I'm trying to multitask. Uh, why didn't the governor act earlier or the legislature act earlier? Were they concerned about the court cases? Were they concerned about the other's action? And then why weren't people mostly concerned about saving lives in all of those decisions, all those political battles? And then were people not considering the disproportionate impact that this would have in a metropolitan area as condensed population as Milwaukee is, especially to people of color, low income folks, persons with disabilities, the elderly? Um, why, when this all started and we knew that the safer at home order from the governor was going to be until the end of the month, why didn't the legislature or the governor act or the election commissions and insist on sending everyone an absentee ballot? Um, and and why, or to every household? And um, why do we still have a system where people have to register to vote, which adds a whole nother layer of disenfranchisement to the community? Why can't we just move to everybody is registered to vote and then they could have sent the ballots to everyone? What's going to happen with the voters who did request their absentee ballots by the deadline and didn't get them for the election? Um, what's going to happen with the folks who went to vote and they were confused about what poll to go and then were turned away after standing? We've heard some examples after standing in line for so long. It looks like Christine might be here, Johnny. Could you take another look and see if you can bring her on? Go ahead and bring her on. Anytime I'm talking, interrupt me. What happens to the folks who sent their absentee ballot in during that window when the court said, or when the election or the court or someone said, you can send it in without a witness signature as long as you put a statement in there that you don't have anyone to witness for you? And then, so do those get counted in that window? And then now the court said it, after that, the court said it needed. And then, you know, how can they tell when those were sent in or not? Can we ask Andrea to get off and ask Chris, I'm sorry, to our viewers, can we ask Andrea to bump herself off of the software of the room, and then see if, and ask Christine to get back on, and then we'll hold off on bringing Andrea on until Christine is out, because possibly the two of them trying to enter at the same time is what's bumping them off. So Andrea, if you could clock out, and if we can have Christine try again. Again, the questions about witness signature, not witness signature. What happens with the ballots that were discovered at the post offices reportedly that didn't arrive to people's homes. And then why, if there were some National Guard present, and the question, if we had to have the election, right? Because that's like the sort of last choice people would have wanted in this time. But if there were some National Guard present, even though yesterday we heard they were doing that voluntarily, and there's nothing but respect and appreciation to the National Guard. We're not talking about the members that have been so generous. We're talking about authorities' decisions. Is if we do have the National Guard, could they have not been used to support more polls being open? Although we also discussed the other day that having military presence in an election doesn't make some people feel safe, and it may put into question the who's controlling elections or what can and can't happen. And then last but not least, if the elections were going to be postponed and not postponed, and polls change, and the way you can vote change, aren't there any laws that demand notice of change? And don't they have a window of time of which you have to ensure people have enough notice? And what are the rules that govern the way they inform folks of changes? So if a court makes a ruling, or the governor of their legislature make a decision, or the election commission, shouldn't they have to notify people in all kinds of platforms, not assuming that people are going to hear a press conference or a press release, right? That communication goes to a privileged few. All right, so those are the questions. If you have more questions that you want answered, we're going to try to work to get some of these answers from you. What I'll ask now is for Andrea to get back on the line in about 5 minutes if we aren't able to get Christine on. In the meantime, let me see if there are any comments or questions from our viewers. And I want to remind you to enter our drawing by liking or sharing this Facebook Live, or making a comment or a question, by sharing your thoughts on what we could be covering in later forums in the resident choice, viewer choice spot, by sending in a selfie if you did take the extra precautions to be safe and to vote. If you filled out the census, a screenshot of that or a selfie. And then last, at the end of the show, to make sure that you fill out our survey. Those are all the ways that you can enter the drawing. We may have to call Christine like I did with Dr. Baez a little bit ago. I'm going to try to call her right now, and maybe we can get her on that way. We heard back from the software company that's managing this that they are having such a difficult time with the overload with folks, that's what's causing the problems in the software. So what we were sharing for the topic today is the elections took place on Tuesday. Despite the risk to the coronavirus, despite the governor's order for a safer at home. Would you share some general thoughts about that? And then maybe for up to 7-10 minutes, and then I'll come back with any questions that might be relevant to what you share with us. But you can talk right to the screen and just keep your phone handy.
Okay. So first of all, I just want to thank Tammy and the crew that's been so helpful to make this communication possible, and the good work of the Southside Organizing Center. Voces and SOC have worked together for many years and obviously have worked with a lot of the similar community, Latino working class, particularly Latino immigrant working class families, mixed immigration status families. And we have been involved in election work since 2004, organizing the Latino community. What I found most disturbing about this last election was that I had never been in an election before since 2004, where we were on the one hand working with the Latino community and the youth to make sure people had what they needed to participate in the elections, while at the same time organizing very hard for the postponement of those elections. And we were very disappointed in the final result. We saw this was an election that should have been postponed, and we really saw, I think, in essence, we saw, these elections were stolen, and they have put people's lives at risk. And who do I hold accountable for that? First and foremost, I do hold the Republican leadership, which is State Assembly Representative Voss and State Senator Fitzgerald, for endangering, not on a partisan level, but all Wisconsinites who are voters, all Wisconsinites who are poll workers, all Wisconsinites who have family who, when they're coming home, they are increasing the chances that someone gets sick and dies. It was we know that during this emergency health order, to hold an election where you have hundreds of people waiting in line means we are going to see in 2 weeks and then 4 weeks more people sick, more people dying. And it concerns me very much that, especially when we think about it in the Latino and Black community, where we have seen higher levels of when people get coronavirus because of the history of disenfranchisement, because of the history of poverty, that we're going to see more deaths. And so I want to thank, first and foremost, people that worked as poll workers, that voted. A lot of people did that because they felt, they know how important it is that we vote, that we have people in government that are going to respond to our needs at a time when we see that that's not happening. So I condemn the decision by the Republican leadership to work to file this motion with the Wisconsin Supreme Court to end Governor Evers' postponement of the election, which would have pushed it back to June 9th, would have allowed time for more people to participate in terms of requesting their ballots or even getting their ballots, to make it a true democratic election. I also condemn the judges, the conservative judges that made this decision, both at the state level and at the federal level, where they took away at the federal level the option for people's to have the time to get the ballot and turn it in. So we know thousands of people were disenfranchised that way too. And then lastly, I also do have a critique of Governor Evers and of the Secretary of Health, Palm, because I do believe that, at the very end on election day, actually, myself and others did a public protest by doing a caravan, which was a safe event. We made sure, talking to health professionals, it was a safe event, to really call on, at that point, what was the last recourse, which was Secretary of Health Palm, to put an emergency health order. And we were really looking at her. She had the power to do it, and she didn't exercise it. I think the governor waited too long. It should have been a joint emergency order with the Secretary of Health. And so I kind of rank it in that order of culpability. At the end of the day, we have seen a failure of our political system, of our court system, And I think it means that we have to really work hard as a community to make sure that working through people we know, especially and through a public campaign, options such as this, where people can share information. We have to do a massive community campaign to educate, especially people who need the information or speak a second language, don't have it, technology is not easily accessible. How can we help each other make sure that moving forward, we have a massive effort for people to ask for the ballot at home. We know people need help understanding how to do that. So even people that tried, we know there were errors with people not doing it right, you know, in terms of like taking a photo, uploading that, or, you know, getting a signature of someone who's 18 years old and a US citizen on your ballot, on, you know, on the envelope to be signed. We know our community needs information anyway, and now this is another issue that we have to deal with. I still think we need to fight for accountability, especially when we see those numbers go up. Today, the Secretary of Health was saying we may have to extend for a month because we're going to see this bumped up as a consequence of this election, when it was in her hands to stop it. So first and foremost, I do hold Voss and Fitzgerald accountable. I do. But ultimately, it's going to be a movement that puts pressure on our elected officials. And we have to take care of ourselves in many ways to make sure that this happens. And we build a movement that's strong enough to make sure that we don't get disenfranchised.
Thank you, Christine, for your
Very thoughtful sharing today. Many concerns folks are having echoed in your remarks, but also some of the explanation that you offered between the different authorities and parties are a key question that the layperson is asking, like, who's responsible? Who could have done something? What could have been done? And looking for how do we move forward now, just in a health manner with the consequences of that gathering of the election, and looking forward to how do we have the census occur, how do we have the fall election occur, and how do we move forward during this traumatizing time together in a more unified and directed way, as you said, because we'll have to protect ourselves and our community as we see that some authorities are not doing that. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to our continued collaboration.
As well, thank you,
Stay,
Tammy.
stay
Bye-bye.
safe. Bye-bye. Again, a thanks to Dr. Tony Baez, all the way from Puerto Rico, for sharing his thoughts today, and for Christine Numen Ortiz for sharing hers. We're going to see if we can bring Andrea on now. We have a leadership strategy at SOC. There are three strategies that are important to us. One is our traditional grassroots organizing from the time of inception of SOC, which, if you don't know, this is our 30th anniversary. And so SOC has been around for 30 years. And so issues of justice and equity, resident voice and vote have been with SOC all of these 30 years. And now, so we continue to do grassroots organizing. Our civic engagement is part of that. And we have three key strategies now: the grassroots organizing with civic engagement, leadership development, and a future strategy that will be unrolling is community development in a larger, more meaningful way than we do now. So right now, we'd like to invite our leadership coordinator, Andrea Rodriguez, to join us on the forum. I'll talk about the Hola, Andrea, can you hear us?
Hola.
And we can...
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So I'm going to share our overall leadership strategy, and then I'd love for you to share about our Gold Institute. as I said, we have those three strategies, and one of those is leadership development. What's really important to us is to ensure that residents in our district have a voice, have a vote, and a vehicle to organize. To that, one of what we envision for the future of the South Side is that our mission, which is to work with and for residents to ensure that they have a safe, a livable, and economically vibrant neighborhood and community, that happens through a thriving resident association in each of the natural geographic areas of the South Side. So we have established, co-established, and support almost a dozen resident groups or associations. And we created several leadership opportunities. Besides the fact that if you're a volunteer, if you have to do an internship, a work study, a field study, community service, all those ways you can serve SOC. We have a whole youth leadership program we'll talk about later. We put on an annual grassroots organizing conference that we launched last year. We support several other leadership efforts in the community. But one of our prized programs we launched now 2 years ago. First year developing and piloting. Last cycle, which is going to end now at the end of the June, is our first cohort. And we're very attached, got a lot of affection for this program, and very proud to partner with the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, who is funding these efforts to ensure that we build leadership in our neighborhoods. So Andrea, share with us about the GOLD Institute. Tell us what GOLD stands for and share with us what that is.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me on today. And I think having our legacy leaders, Dr. Baez and Christine Newman-Ortiz, the theme I heard with them over and over again is that we really need to organize right now. So GOLD is Grassroots Organizing Leadership Development Institute that we have going on at Southside Organizing Center. In my mind, it is the most holistic leadership institute that we have that is accessible to residents. We are located, when we have our regular programming, at our headquarters over on 1300 West Layton Boulevard, but we are going hybrid, we are going digital with the rest of this class, and we are taking applications for cohort 2, which will be starting in July of this summer. Right now, I am having applications go out to residents that are interested. Our GOLD Institute will be organizing and helping neighborhoods build capacity and sustainability by training resident and also resident leaders. So this is the kind of person who is already kind of active in their neighborhoods. They're looking to learn more tools. They're learning to gain more membership, maybe for a group that they currently have. And we have a variety of groups. We have traditional neighborhood associations. We do have gardening groups. We do have quite a variety of civic engagement groups that our organizers have established and have been doing training with us for quite a while now. So, you know, really amazing groups that could use more residents. And those of you that feel some of that disenfranchisement that we were talking about with Christine, with Tony, this is a chance for you to come and organize and learn the tools to make sure that these kind of things never happen again. And, you know, we do make sure that we personalize our training with every cohort. We are family friendly. We do, again, personal leadership development, resident leadership development, and also grassroots organizing development. And we will also have a variety of things to offer. So anyone in our SOC district, they are allowed to get a $2,400 scholarship, which includes all the training. There is a $100 scholarship for our grassroots organizing conference, which we just had this past summer. We're going to be having our next one very soon. There's monthly cohort sessions, and every cohort gets to, you know, make a decision on when we meet. If they want to meet, you know, during the week, if they want to meet on the weekend, as a collective, we are very democratic about it. We vote and we personalize every workshop for every group. Light refreshments, and we always have our bilingual English-Spanish translation available. And we often have our speakers, our legacy leaders come, other grassroots organizers, and other experts in Milwaukee that come and share tools with our residents. So we're very lucky to have this. I'm going to keep talking for a moment because I can't tell if I'm going to jump back on. I apologize. Applications right now, if you'd like to get them, you can just email at gold@socmilwaukee.org. The due date, if you go on our website, you can see our due date as well. It'll be April 30th for the due date. I'll be doing interviews with potential leaders for our cohort 2 in May. By June, we'll be selecting, and that'll also be the graduation time of cohort 1. So we're very excited with them right now and the work they've done. And we'll be starting cohort 2 orientation and kickoff of July 2020 with graduation in June 2021. And it's a once-a-month class and lots of great tools.
Thank you, Andrea, for letting us know about the Gold Institute, and we're looking forward to celebrating with our graduates this year and bringing on our new fellows for the coming year. We appreciate your time, and we'll have you back talking about other programming that you do with SOC. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite you all to be with us again tomorrow, 3 o'clock with SOC. And we're hoping, and I just literally right now on my cell phone, right at this very time, so timely, heard back from Judge Pedro Colon, who will be with us tomorrow, responding to the issue of why the election was held, despite the risk to the coronavirus, and despite the governor's order of safer at home. Pedro Colon is a circuit court judge here in Milwaukee. He was a state representative for over a decade here, so he'll be able to shed some light from a state legislature perspective. And also, he was the first Latino IX we elected to office here in Wisconsin, a great partner in the community who lives on the near south side. And so we'll be hearing from him tomorrow at 3. Please tune in to hear him. And then on Monday, we have Marquette University law professor Ed Falone, who will also be weighing in on this topic. And then we should be hearing the election results next week. And legacy farm worker rights leader Jesus Salas will be with us next week as well. You don't want to miss this opportunity to hear from our legacy leaders in the community on this topic at a time where it has been so confusing, disturbing, discouraging, concerning. And hopefully we will be able to bring some answers to that slew of very thoughtful, very well thought out questions that our residents have for you. So please tune in tomorrow. I want to remind you to like and share this Facebook Live in order to be entered into our drawing for a $25 gift certificate. You can also share your questions and your comments here. That'll enter you. Make suggestions for the viewer's choice segment of the forum. Take a selfie or share a picture that you took during election day. Share a screenshot or a selfie of you completing the census, or do the survey that you'll see on the screen shortly at SurveyMonkey. All of this information as well, if you didn't catch it with me speaking it, is in our comments for this Facebook Live. You'll be able to fill out the survey and the link will be there and be entered into the drawing. And speaking of the drawing, are you listening? Our winner for yesterday's engagement with our 3 o'clock SOC Facebook Live is Felix Kestel, longtime friend of SOC and very active in the community and business owner as well. Felix, contact SOC to redeem your $25 gift certificate to one of the restaurants or businesses that support SOC, or a restaurant or business who's been doing a good deed during this time. Again, I want to remind you that the views and opinions shared in this forum do not necessarily reflect those of SOC. We want to thank you for your time. Be safe, and we'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock with SOC.